Hey, Fiends of the Pod, this is your host, film critic, and comedian Nate Wyckoff, reminding you to like, subscribe, and comment. You can also go to cultandclassicfilms.com/subscribe and sign up to have cult exclusive movies sent to your door every single month. These are ultra low budget exclusive films that we get to you in the best quality possible with tons of extras like commentaries, milk caps, autographed posters, slipcovers, all sorts of neat things. And remember, every time you like, subscribe, and buy a movie from us, you prevent Michael Bay from making one more film. So go ahead, subscribe, and enjoy.
Welcome to Cult and Classic.
Welcome, friends and fiends, to another episode of Cult and Classic Films Podcast, the podcast where we bring you two thematically linked films, one mainstream and one cult, and discuss them both. This is part two of our most recent pairing, and this is one of those times, which do happen, as you'll notice, where we're not really talking about a mainstream and a cult movie. These are two. I'm not even sure we can call these cult movies. They're not particularly old. The first one is a cult film at this point. It's 2019's Verotica by original Misfits vocalist Glenn Danzig. It was his initial writer-director feature. It's an anthology. Listen to last episode for details on it. And we also talked about it once before. We revisited it because today we're going to be talking about his newest feature from 2022, which is called 2021 is when it wrapped production. It is called Death Rider in the House of Vampires. Now, this movie has not been released for the public. It has, however, screened. So we have some we've been able to see it, and we're going to talk about it. There are a couple of other reviews floating around from various screenings, but not too many. So if you're listening to this, you probably haven't seen those yet or read those, heard those, etc. And this is going to be a very special early into the game review for you. And boy, oh boy. Well, I'm going to say the first thing. The movie poster is great. I believe Simon Bisley did it. It's lovely. Looks wonderful. Lots of people from the movie on it. Great likenesses. Rich colors.
You're reaching, Nate.
I'm talking about the movie poster because the movie poster is great. Okay, so here's the deal. We're just doing
the positive part of the podcast.
Well, I'm your host, film critic and comedian Nate Wyckoff, and with us today we have longtime contributors Mandy Longley. How are you doing, Mandy?
I'm great and
excellent.
Ready for this podcast. It's gonna suck blood.
Suck blood, yes. And we also have longtime contributor Tad Mastroianni. How are you doing, Tad?
I can't wait to review the classic movie From Dusk Till Dawn.
From Dusk Till Dawn. Yeah, there's a couple of things we can talk about here. So this is called Death Rider in the House of Vampires. Glenn Danzig's sophomore writing, directing feature. It's got a lot more star power behind it, and I actually don't mean that as a joke. It actually has some great cast members in cameos and in actual roles. But let's just talk about the plot. It's very simple. It's a spaghetti western that takes place with vampires in a vampire town that I guess they call sanctuary because they're supposed to be able to live peacefully. It's never explained. But anyway, and the lead character, Death Rider himself, goes in and just kind of hangs around there until he enacts his master plan of killing the vampires. Not all of them. Just ones that run afoul of him until he kills the head vampire, the Count. This isn't a spoiler. There's nothing surprising in this movie. It's very clear from the get-go what you're getting, especially if you've ever watched any Western before in the history of time, especially something like Django, any of the Man with No Name trilogy.
I don't know, the thing I just mentioned, maybe.
Yeah, From Dusk Till Dawn, of course, which is Robert Rodriguez and was it Rodriguez and Tarantino? Yes. Rodriguez and Tarantino. In fact, Tarantino, I think, isn't that the one he gave up his Directors Guild membership for because they don't allow co-directing, and he gave it up to co-direct with Rodriguez?
Anyway. I don't know, but I do distinctly remember he definitely cast Salma Hayek and himself so he could drink tequila off her foot.
That is Tarantino for you. Yeah, so I don't. Okay. Anyway, yeah, so he gets revenge, and then that's the end of the movie. if you listened to our review of the anthology, Verotica, based off of I say based off, it's literally like transcribed from a selection of questionable comic book stories from Glenn Danzig's self-published Verotica comic series. Last week we talked about it. The biggest complaint among many, it is a universally panned film, which doesn't mean it's not entertaining in its own right on occasion. The stories have no story. There's no endings, there's no plot. It just starts and then ends at a random point without any closure, purpose, etc. This movie, I can tell you, actually does seem to have a beginning and an end. The middle is sort of this murky, opaque, shifting, rectangle of colors and occasional recognizable characters that pass through, with several lines repeated over and over and over again, for whatever reason. But at least it has a beginning and an end, right? It's closer. I was reading one review. I can't remember. I don't know if it was Dread Central or somebody reviewed it, and this is what they said. They said, the good news is Death Rider is better than Verotica. The bad news is it's only a little better than Verotica. I will say this before we even get into the details. I do think Death Rider in the House of Vampires on many levels is far superior to Verotica. I also think it's even harder to watch. We'll get into why. But anyway, let's get into this. Mandy, what were you expecting from Death Rider in the House of Vampires, and what did you come away with?
I guess I was expecting a character named Death Rider. Check. Got
Check.
that. I was expecting a House of Vampires. I suppose there was something resembling a house, saloon / brothel / underground.
Is it all in one
secret
building?
pit.
I can't really tell. I assumed it was, I
I'm
guess.
pretty sure it's all continuous. But definitely, I mean, there's like saloon brothel, right?
Right.
And then
Upstairs, yeah. We assume upstairs.
It's pretty typical.
upstairs or downstairs, but I feel like at the end of the film, when we're in what we think is like the crypts, they said something about downstairs. I think. I don't know. I was very confused by that
directions. Spatial awareness is not the strong suit of this movie, but that's okay.
Right?
It's a minor point.
So yeah, I thought that it was all kind of connected. There is like one exterior scene, like where
and
they
the opening,
kill
which is exterior, yeah.
Yeah, and like the beginning, but everything else is inside. So I just assumed it was all like one building.
Yeah, no, you're right.
So,
I agree,
yeah.
and I think it's probably I think it might actually be kind of the most. I hadn't thought about it, but you're right. It is like the most effective or descriptive title that we've seen in a long time. It is exactly what it says, right?
So it's like,
The
anyway,
lead character,
House of
Death
Vampires.
Rider. Yeah, literally spends time in the House of Vampires. Anyway, okay.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I guess I don't know. Because we just watched Verotica, I was expecting it to probably be equally kind of crummy the way Verotica was, or like nonsensical. We did still get like shots of characters just walking silently across rooms for no reason for extended periods of time. So
Emphasis on the silent.
That is, yeah, exactly. That choice continued into this film.
Yeah, can we talk about the fact that one of the title credits, by the way, the title credits in the opening, which are silent, essentially, it goes on for about 4.5 minutes.
Yeah.
So there's like 6 to 10, I think there's like 6 minutes of intro shots, which consists of Death Rider. We'll get into the actual cast, but Death Rider riding on a horse, dragging another woman on a horse with very large breasts, who is topless and gagged, taking her along.
And in booty shorts.
Those shorts are straight up disco shorts. Like they're this metallic, metallic silver lycra kind of thing. I'm like, what? Why that? Of all things, like what? I mean, and also,
but also, like, I texted you guys. I'm like, I'm sorry, guys. I started watching Death Rider, but I had to shut it off. I was so enraged by the costuming of that poor woman on the horse in the opening.
I know, because it's like 6 minutes of her bouncing painfully on top of that horse with no support.
This is
like
usually
literally
an
for
indication
half
that
of
you're
it, she's
thinking
like
too much.
leaning over the pommel of the Western saddle. I'm like, so
Yeah.
her crotch is not touching the saddle, and like her
Yeah.
breasts are like kind of maybe supported against
And
something.
at first, it's sort of like at
Like,
first I assumed like I guess Danzig told her to like be sexy and like slump over, but it's not sexy.
yeah,
It just looks like a weird pain comfort thing, and it's really awful
yeah,
looking. It's just
yeah.
awful.
I was
That
like, this poor
particular.
actress is just, they're probably just like, just stay on the horse. And she's like, this is the only way that my body is like, my thigh skin is not chafing off and my breasts are not detaching from my rib cage. Like, it was just,
Yeah.
anyway, I had to take a break after the first 5 minutes, like a few days, and then come back to it when I was less upset. And,
To be fair, it's the first 6 minutes
just,
in silence.
okay, 6
We
minutes. I think I only made it through 5 minutes of those 6 minutes.
we do get the one song. The one song that is in this movie is played over the title scene, which is actually by Glenn Danzig. It is by Danzig, and actually, I kind of think it's pretty decent. It's a sort of westerny song with Danzig. Here's what I'll say about the song though: is I don't know so much if it's an original song as it is an amalgamation of a couple of other riffs crammed into Dolly Parton's Jolene. It is very derivative. It's the kind of thing that it's like when you watch a shark movie like Cruel Jaws or Tintoretta, something from the 60s or something from the 80s when it was ripping off Jaws, and instead of like dun 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 dun, they have like dun 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 dun. You know what I mean? It's very close to that. But I mean, I enjoyed it.
To make sure that you don't have to pay royalties.
Right. So yeah. So Mandy. What
So anyway, so the last thing I was expecting was there to be some semblance of a story like
right.
vampires versus something else, like, but it seemed like either you were a vampire, like all of them were, even Death Rider was a vampire. Yes,
Apparently, it's like they
maybe.
were gonna I kept waiting for them to reveal he's like take off his teeth. Like, I'm not a vampire, but it doesn't happen.
Yeah, right? Yeah, but like you were kind of expecting it to happen for like several reasons throughout the film.
He never drinks
And
blood,
then,
so I mean, I don't
yeah,
it's
well,
just
that's what like
anyway.
he's like, yeah, he like avoids drinking blood. And you're like, okay, well, he either has like some kind of moral code, like Blade or something, right? Or he's not a vampire and he's just trying to fool them so that he can like seek some kind of revenge,
Which
or he's
apparently
just
is pretty easy.
vampires. Which is
Apparently
like,
a couple of acrylic nails would do the job, but anyway.
yeah, anyway, so I was expecting something as far as like one side versus another side, or there to be like some kind of like reason that he was there, and then maybe later you find out he's going to kill them, like, but I'm not really sure. That kind of just happened. And then yeah, but there aren't. You're either like a prostitute at the brothel, or you're a vampire hanging out at the Western saloon.
And the prostitutes
like
are mostly, if not all, vampires. I guess a couple of the saloon girls are not, I guess.
They seem like a lot of the saloon girls were just humans, which I'm like, but where are the humans coming from? Like,
right. It's unclear. Like,
what's happening?
yeah.
Anyway,
I've got thoughts on
I was
that, but
left with more questions than answers on this one. Like,
yeah, fair.
you know, and
I do
that's, I
think
guess, I mean, I should have expected that, but I didn't walk in with that expectation. But next time I'll know. Next time Danzig releases a film, I will know what to expect.
there will be a next time, I'm sure. This one has to come out first, I would assume. Tad, I know you were waiting for this. You've been asking for us to talk about this movie on recorded air for literally like what, 2 years since it was wrapped.
Yes.
So Tad, what were you expecting from Death Rider and the House of Vampires, and what did you get, Mr. Giant Glenn Danzig fan?
I got exactly what I deserved. I mean, that's really what it comes down to. But I have a lot of thoughts. But
yeah,
Mandy, after we watched Verotica, you should have known exactly what to expect. I mean, I don't know.
I know, it's sort of like a fool me once, shame on me, fool me, or fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me situation. Absolutely.
Can't get fooled again.
Absolutely.
Yeah, can't get fooled again. Fool
What was my
me
fault?
once, can't get fooled again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No joke. I have a full list of things that are just what was good, what was bad, and what was blatantly missed. And this is absolutely peak Danzig in terms of you missed the point, Danzig. You are not Rob Zombie. I am sorry. It is okay. You can improve if you have self-awareness, which I don't think Danzig has.
That's, I think, the problem, right? I don't know.
He
Now,
doesn't have that.
do you have the list in front of you?
Yes, I'm going to read it right
Okay,
now.
let's go through it right now.
So let's see.
Are you starting with the good or
No,
or
I'm going to
bad?
start off with misses. Okay.
Okay, the misses.
Missed opportunities, because this is what you would do if you have a little bit of self-awareness and take feedback. One, you should probably look at your plot and go, am I just ripping off a 1996 movie of which is very beloved by a lot of cult aficionados?
Correct.
From Dusk Till Dawn. This is a blatant fucking ripoff of From Dusk Till Dawn, which was a superior movie in every way. Literally in every way, that was a superior movie, and it has cemented its place in cinema forever. So, you fucked up. Okay, let's move on. Another thing, and this is just from me as a non film director who occasionally has flashes of, hey, maybe this would be a good idea. Maybe you want to pursue that whole theme of Death Rider's ambiguity as to what his identity is. So in the beginning, I saw a little flash of brilliance where there was this thing where it's like, I don't know if he's a vampire. Okay. But you could add the little subtle touches of he needs to be invited through a threshold, because it seemed like in the beginning, like he was like that was what the intent was. Death Rider's coming in.
You've already gone far beyond the depth
what I mean.
that's present in this
This
film.
is what I'm talking about. It's like, that's what I told Mandy. I'm like, you set your expectations way too fucking high here. Okay. I'm going into Jeff territory. All right, let's go. Let's
With
get
the
into
rewrites.
Jeff. Yes,
Okay.
let's get into the Jeff territory. An opportunity for him anytime. Ashley Wisdom's character, because I know her name because she's Danzig's girlfriend. I know this.
Oh, is she? I didn't know that. She played Dejette in the
Correct.
and the spider, albino spider
Correct.
short.
And I also know that she's significantly younger than him.
Of course. I mean, she's been pumped to the gods. I think she was my favorite character in this one.
No,
frankly.
That's the thing. That's another one of the goods. The goods is coming. But the idea of him walking through the saloon and having to consistently ask for permission to come through the door would have been a great hint. It's like, he might be a vampire, but we don't know. But that's a great, because that's been a cinema thing forever, is you have to invite the vampire in. Again, too much thought, but let's move on. We had the special effects for vampire ashing 25 fucking years ago with the Blade, the first Blade movie. Okay. All right. We had that on lockdown. And I understand that Danzig doesn't have the millions of dollars that New Line Cinema had back in the day for the original Blade movie, which millions, I don't think it was even millions. That was 1998, if I'm not mistaken. And
most of it went to Wesley Snipes.
Of course.
Most of their budget.
And he deserved it.
Yes, I mean, it was a great.
He needed to pay his taxes.
It was fun. A lot of, at least most of it.
But I'm just saying, we had this on lockdown, and there are people on the like just randomly out there on the internet who could do those special effects for cheap as shit, and he doesn't know to just go to those people and go, "Hey, I'm Glenn Danzig. Do you want to do some special effects for my film?"
You know what's funny? I actually was surprised that the digital effects that were used were actually whoever did them actually did a lot with a little, because it was very antiquated. There's that scene near the end where one of the random cloaked vampires, his head like starts to cave in. That was cheesy looking. That was too 1999. But
or a Janice Click movie, maybe.
No, Janice Click uses practical effects. Don't be silly.
I'm just saying, you can do a cave in face for like $5.
Yes, it could have been done. But they did a good, like, at one point. In fact, when Ashley Wisdom's character, who is Mina, I think Mina, when she dies. She dies sort of again, it's a blade take. The vampire held out in the sunlight, held out in the dawn or whatever. And they don't explode. They just kind of catch fire and burn up. They did this thing, I think, where they had flecks of color or something on her clothing that and I could be wrong, but this is exactly what it looked like, that they colored out, they chroma keyed it out and then had like flame effects beneath it, and they were small enough that it looked like it was burning from within. And I'm like, that's actually a brilliant, incredibly low budget way to enhance an effect. So there were a few touches like that that I did notice, but we'll get to my concerns with the effects, but they are dated.
You're sort of reinventing the wheel. You don't have to figure out how to do all this stuff when you could just go. You're Glenn fucking Danzig. You could go talk to people and go, I want to make a vampire movie. How do I make a vampire movie? And they'd probably be like, hey,
Danzig,
you know what?
spot on, by the
I
way.
really loved the Misfits when I was young. Here, I'll give you some pointers. Anyway, moving on. I'm just gonna blast through these real quick.
Yep, do it.
Danny Trejo was wasted. No fucking surprise.
He had I don't think he had a day of filming. He must have been paid for just like half a day or something.
And not only that, it's like, you're gonna die, Death Rider, or something like that. I don't remember. It's like,
made no sense.
It went way too long. It's like, I'll go on how I am. I'm always about the wasted screen time. It's like, you're just doing the same thing over and over again.
And Danny Trejo is he has like all of these guest stars, or Julian Sands, who actually has kind of a sizable role for whoever's in this movie. Like, not a lot of people have a huge role. They bring so much more than is actually there, right? The gravitas far exceeds the tiny amount of content they have to deliver,
which means you waste it, because if you're gonna have someone like that of that caliber, do something with it. Sure. Julian Sands largely wasted. So really sad.
It is sort of, I'm sad because, one, it's of course tragic that we lost Julian Sands. For those who don't know, Julian Sands died during not this last tropical storm, but during recent heavy rainstorms here in California, I believe in Los Angeles County. He went hiking and he was an experienced hiker and was caught in the storm and unfortunately died. But he was, he's from Warlock, Dario Argento's Phantom of the Opera. Boxing Helena, one of the most upsetting and excellent true cult underground sort of style films that we've had to reach mainstream. So it was very tragic to see him. And I don't know how many other projects he may have had in the can already. I have a feeling this isn't the true last one, but this is the last one that everybody's thinking about.
Right. Devon Sawa, wasted.
Devon Sawa is our lead. He, of course, was Casper in the Christina Ricci Casper movie, he was the lead in Idle Hands.
Yeah, I was going to say, he's the dude with the hand in Idle Hands. Yep. Okay. That's done with the misses for now.
Okay.
Let's go to the good. Some of the kill special effects were pretty good. Although, like I said, it's like, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. This didn't need to... I get the feeling that they kind of had to reinvent it a little bit. The guy, I don't know the actor, but the guy who tortures and kills people, who violates sanctuary law, pours the silver in the guy.
That's ELI ROTH. That's ELI ROTH.
Is it ELI ROTH?
It is.
Holy shit! I can't even recognize him.
For those who don't know, I'll be shocked. Most of you should know his name. He, of course, wrote and directed the Hostel films, the original Cabin Fever,
Abomination.
That's correct. One of my favorite, one of the only sort of revival of sort of jungle fiction mondo films. Just a very good filmmaker and also a very good actor. He played the Bear Jew in Tarantino's Inglourious Bastards, and I did get to meet him very briefly. It's very nice. Shake hands with him. I believe it was during the Los Angeles Film Festival premiere of The Last Exorcism, because he didn't make it, but he did produce it. So we stand ELI ROTH here. So anyway, yes, he was great.
Yeah. So he was not wasted, thankfully. And
well, he clearly wrote his own lines. Like a lot of these people, just because he says the same thing a lot, and I have a feeling that it's because he didn't have enough. There was probably nothing really written for him. He just was supposed to go in and
the best.
Right. And so he says stuff like, you son of a bitch, like 10 times, but also it's like, well, one, he didn't have lines, I'm sure, otherwise. And two, I kind of doubt it's the way it's delivered is sort of the way you are like when you expect that only one take is going to be used, and instead they use every single
Oh my fucking god.
Anyway, yes.
So the I just enjoyed the fact that Death Rider. I enjoyed that scene. I don't know the actress's name. I'm just going to call her the redhead. The idea of getting the stake in the redhead, and you think she's going to die, and then someone pulls it out at the last second. Pretty decent.
Yeah.
Pretty decent, gotta say. It was okay. Like, again, our transfer is really bad, so I get the feeling that I'm not getting the full experience because the transfer was so bad. The visuals were so horrible.
I think I got the full experience. Yeah, no, I mean, okay. So you're talking about Kim Director. She's done a lot of good stuff. She was in Inside Man, Spike Lee's Inside Man. She was in, I can't remember everything. She's been in a lot of stuff. So she's not new to the game. That's right. She was Kim in Blair Witch 2, The Book of Shadows, Blair Witch 2 rather. So she's been around, and she does have a role. So I liked that too in theory, but the edit was not right. So much time had passed in the story between when she's stabbed by the stake, which is interesting. It's clearly supposed to be a silver railroad tie, which is
Right.
kind of interesting. It's never explained, but it's kind of interesting. Because he uses those as stakes, which I kind of like. I don't know where he, I guess we're supposed to be assuming that he like, coated them in silver. So that's an interesting touch. Railroad spikes, Western. I dig it.
I do like that.
Yeah, but she gets stabbed, and then like we get like 20, 15 or 20 minutes before we see her still dying on the
She's
bed.
just sitting
And
there like 20 minutes,
yeah,
like,
and everybody else dies within like 30 seconds or so. So it could have been cut a little better to be more less jarring. But yes.
And I feel like more consistent with the rest of the editing, right? Like the
but
rest of the
she's
death.
a main
Or
character,
like,
so she
set her
can't.
up as a stronger vampire. Like she's older, so you take her longer to die.
She is clearly stronger than
Something.
our lead, than Death Rider. We just don't know if Death Rider is even a vampire. It's very unclear.
Right.
I mean,
I'm
he
assuming
has
he's
fangs.
not. I don't know. He has
He has
fangs, but like
fangs.
he gets bitten by her and like shrieks and it. Anyway, okay. So I agree. It seems like he's supposed to, but we'll get to it. So anyway, keep going.
Okay, so like I said, getting through here. The set design was actually really good, and it was better than Verotica. Like,
Yes, absolutely.
in the thing about this is I have a really hard time judging Verotica and this on equal ground, because Verotica, going back and watching Verotica, which our copy is very high def,
Yes,
like we're watching a bootleg, and going back and watching
for this
Verotica,
review. Yeah, our review copy appears to be a bootleg. We did not source this, folks. Anyway, continue.
Yeah, we're not getting the full. We're not getting the full intended visuals for the special effects. We're not getting the sound design, which is still kind of crap as far as I'm concerned.
The sound design, it will not get better.
Non-existent.
I'm sorry. I don't.
I mean, it's the same as Verotica. It's like people walking across the room.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's
yes.
There's nothing there, and there's no music.
So I'll say that
barely any music in either.
We enhanced this footage. I enhanced this footage because it was poor. It's still not fantastic, but I honestly don't think that. I'm not sure it's going to be improved by improved visuals. I almost wonder if it's going to be a little more janky looking if we improve the visuals. But I do agree. The sets, which I think are probably actual locations except for the catacombs. I'm not sure though. Or who knows? Maybe not, because it's filmed from a very specific angle. So who knows? But they're far superior. We know where we are every shot.
Yeah, seriously. So remember last week we were talking about how Verotica was one of the least erotic, like supposed to sort of.
Yes.
At least this movie had, like, it's almost like Glenn took a little bit of that feedback and went, I guess I should make it a little sexier. So at least some of the scenes, or at least some of the acting, was a little better. Like Ashley Wisdom felt more comfortable in this role.
Yeah,
And even
she was,
though
I think she was actually one of the better
she
of them.
absolutely was, like, I liked her more than what would you say, Kim Director?
Yes.
Like Kim
Kim
Director
Director,
was supposed to be the sexy one,
but
but
it
she
felt
ended up kind of
flopped.
being flat, whereas at least
And she's
Ashley
a beautiful
Wisdom was
woman, but it's not,
trying.
yeah, it
You
didn't.
have to have some charisma, and it wasn't working.
Well, and it's a natural thing, right? Like if you don't, if you're in a scene and you both of you are acting to a different tone, sort of, right? It doesn't really work as well. Like Kim Director was being very like kind of grand with her acting, gestured very performative with the era. Like her lines were constantly like these weird like vampire twists on um old schlocky western talk, you know, like the equivalent of like partner, that kind of thing,
She's
partner.
trying to be like the head prostitute, and it's just not
Yeah, she's
working.
supposed to be the dame and she's not the dame. I don't know exactly what her role really is in this place. But whereas Wisdom's bit is just much more, she seems like she's having fun, right? Like, and her character's supposed to be bubbly, and so she gets to play that role, and it just felt like she actually was probably having fun, which is a very different vibe.
It's a
And so, you know,
it's like a completely different character from Dejette, where like she
yes,
clearly was
misery
not
the whole time.
comfortable
No,
playing the
the
role.
accent. I mean,
The
the
accent
French
was fucking
accent
atrocious.
was rough. And I
I
don't
don't.
know. I really don't know enough about Ashley Wisdom to know um if she has an accent of some kind in general. I don't know. I've only ever heard her in these. She's, you know, she's an adult actress under the name Rochelle Ritchie. But she's, you know, at this point been in some other of other film things as well that are not pornography based. I don't really know anything about her, but I thought that her performance in this was a marked step up from Dejette,
It
because as you
was.
said, there's actually a little bit more. Dejette has one note. She's just miserable the whole time. This one, she is happy and scared. So at least we got two. And in this movie, in a Danzig movie, having two emotions throughout
That's
the
a big
movie
step.
is a huge thing, right? Most of these characters have, they only have one emotion. In fact, all of them. I can't think of a single character that has two emotions other than her. Um,
There you
yeah,
go.
I can't think of a
Big
single
step.
one.
Biggest step up. Good for you, Ashley Wilson.
Yeah,
You are moving her
wisdom.
straight
Yeah,
up.
yep.
So the last point, I promise,
No, let's
is
take your time.
besides Eli Roth, not surprising, the best performance in this movie for me was Glenn Danzig's performance.
I actually thought he did pretty
He was
well.
really good in it, but which isn't surprising because he's been on stage for a long
Right.
time. But I mean, like, he like his character wasn't important, but clearly it's supposed to be because it set itself up for a whole sequel at the end,
Right.
where it's like, we're gonna get you, Death Rider. It's like, you're gonna
I
get him for
actually
what?
yeah, I thought he was going to be like the guy. It wasn't going to be the Count, the Julian Sands character that Death Rider was after. I thought he was actually after Glenn Danzig's character, who, so here's a kind of a funny thing. I do really appreciate the names that they got for the characters, because you know, Ashley Wisdom is Mina Bell, but Glenn Danzig is Bad Bathory. Victor DiMattia is Kid Vlad. Danny Trejo is Bella Latigo. Kim Director is Carmilla Joe, and Julian Sands is Count Holiday. Like that's actually fun. I really like the sort of gag references to all of these old west figures. I do think it's interesting that Glenn Danzig's character's name includes a traditionally female reference. Elizabeth Bathory, of course, men were surnamed Bathory as well, but we know Glenn Danzig likes the Elizabeth Bathory reference. So I thought that was funny that he sort of gets a typically female reference in his name, and Kim Director gets Carmilla, which is of course a vampire reference, but also Carmilla Joe, which is very strange. I enjoyed that. I just thought it was a strange, um, just a fun little thing that I honestly I didn't I don't we don't see a lot of jovial, sort of joyous material from Danzig himself. That's not his whole image, his whole shtick, his whole legend. So we don't see it. So seeing something like that, where clearly he was having fun with it, was really cute. I really enjoyed that.
It was nice to see him have fun, but it was also interesting that when he showed up and I went, oh fuck, it's Danzig. He did exactly what I expected him to. Like, he bites, like a prostitute falls in his arms, he bites her, and then I expected him to shit talk, and I expected him to basically just drop her. And I'm like, he did exactly what I expected him to do. So perfect. But
Yeah, I mean,
it was so much fun when he was actually doing it.
And he looked like he was having fun. He actually looked like he was enjoying the character. And so it's sort of funny because and I think this is why he wasn't in Verotica as a lead character, is because nobody wants to really have their movie thought as just a vanity project, right? They don't want people to watch it and go, oh, they just did this because they wanted to, oh, he just made this movie and made himself the lead so he could, kiss attractive women, or she just did this so she could be the star and show everyone how amazing she is. Nobody wants that to be the takeaway. And so it's kind of sad that Verotica, despite him not being a feature in the movie, it is a straight up vanity project, right? I mean, not only it's inherent in it because it's based off of stories he wrote and self-published through his own publishing company. Like, it's literally a vanity project. Death Rider feels less like a vanity project because he's in it, but he's not even a lead, and it just felt more fun. Was that your last point on the list?
Yes, I mean, I heard nobody needs to once again hear me say, hey, holy shit, this scene is going on too long, because that's kind of a fixture of my critique.
Well, because it's a common problem with not only vanity projects, but with just independent and low budget features in general, right? People, we make it, we film every scene, we no longer know what to cut. We're not, we're too close to the project to really understand what should go. This movie is superior on both a technical and a narrative level and an acting level to Verotica in every way possible in those. But here's the problem. Verotica is not so goddamn slow. The whole Death Rider and the House of Vampires film is paced the way that the last anthology segment in Verotica is, which is Druhica, Countess of Blood. It's just like, it is that slow. Characters deliver lines at a glacial pace. Not only that, they'll deliver the line, and this cast has some really heavy hitters and some people that do really well that I maybe didn't expect to. So they stay in character, right? But Danzig, instead of, when you film, you should have beginning and end after the dialogue where the person's in character, for two reasons, right? One, you kind of have a little bit of extra oh shit shots. So if you need to cut to something else, you have footage of them being engaged in whatever's happening, but they don't have to say anything. But you also want it because you don't want it to be the whole, like, really badly cut, like, hey, look over there, turn, oh no, like that. But he shows us all of it. So instead of trimming out what you don't need, a character will, like, look at another character for like 3 seconds, which is like an eternity when you're watching, then say their line, still be in character for another 2-3 seconds, and then it goes to the other character and we see them stare for another 1 to 2 seconds before they deliver their line. I know I said this last week about Verotica. I'm not trying to repeat myself, but I take back the comments where I said people were like, they were on Quaaludes in that, because this is like, the actual camera equipment is on Quaaludes. Everything is so drawn out that it's a common joke in critic circles, right? Where you're like, this is a 10-minute movie stretched out to an hour and a half. This actually is probably a 15, max 20-minute film. Like, you could actually, as it's shot, cut out that much film and have a 20-minute more accurately paced film. Like, it's not even
even the death scenes were annoyingly slow.
So long.
And I'm like, we're
long.
watching this person die for like 3 minutes.
The vampire death scenes, we just watch them char. Like, it's literally watching a log burn. And so,
but no hate on the Yule log, but like,
this is a great Christmas movie now.
Right. Yeah.
Well, what's interesting is they used a speed up effect one time that I noticed, of course, very obviously in the beginning when Death Rider slugs Danny Trejo's character before he ties him up in the desert, presumably to get hit with the sun. We'll get to the sun and daytime in a second. And so they use the effect where Devon Sawa actually like is sped up really fast, which is not the best way to make that effect. It's kind of fun sometimes if you want it to look that way, but if you're actually trying to have a serious like sucker punch moment, there are other ways to do it. Danzig, reach out. I'll give you the tips. I'll show you how to film those. But they could have used that effect, just the easy frame clipping, fast, fast shorten the duration of the scene, make it sped up. You can do that with those death scenes, and it actually probably would have been more effective because you would have had the unnatural movement of jitteriness, right? Because the death scenes are directed very strangely. The only masculine character that is killed that's a vampire that makes a noise other than like this weird like little drone when they die, no matter how long it takes, is ELI ROTH. He actually screams. Every other male character does this, and some of the women vampires who die do this weird, I don't know, it must have been a choice, right? Danzig must have told them to do it this way because they kind of just fold and then they like hunker and then they don't scream. They also don't burst into flame. Only the first guy who dies explodes into little pieces. Everybody else, they just kind of whimper in a weird, like you're having a really, really low-key seizure. I'm not trying to be funny in that particular case. It's like that. Like everyone's just like it's weird. And it's like you want the death to be a big moment, but instead it's like there would be a big moment and then they get slapped. And then you're just like, it kills all momentum. It's a really strange choice. So I don't know what to think about it because it happened for almost all the characters. Whereas the women tend to like scream and scream and scream, which is always, of course, a Glenn Danzig staple.
Yeah.
I don't get that. So the impact of the deaths are very, very mixed. I also think there were a lot of missed opportunities with how characters died. Like, it's not enough to just have, in this day and age, to just have like a character gets shot and fall over and have it happen 5 more times. Like, we want some sort of like memorable moment. And for example, Death Rider uses, when he finally uses his pistols, he uses 2 pistols, right? And it was the perfect opportunity. There's the he's like a Confederate soldier vampire guy who's friends with Bad Bathory, Danzig's character, and he is the one that wants to bust Death Rider once they find out that he lied to get into this, to get sanctuary in this vampire town. And I almost thought they were going to do it.
What sanctuary is.
It must be, they don't explain it, but it seems like they're getting sanctuary to go in there and be safe. It sort of doesn't make sense. I mean,
safe
we're not
from what? Like safe from each other?
Well,
safe
and that's
from
the thing.
some
I'm like,
outside threat? Safe from
I'm like,
sun?
I was like, are humans in the outside like hunting vampires? It's very unclear.
Yeah.
I guess we can assume potentially that they are hunted by humans because we get little snippets of the backstory between Death Rider and Bad Bathory, but it's so you don't know anything and they never tell you anything. There's actually opportunities for exposition that they don't use.
We're missing,
like Death Rider had a sister, maybe?
I was gonna say
he had a sister.
There you go. We're missing a serious piece of the plot that is sort of supposed to frame it all, and it didn't matter in the end. Is the whole point of this movie is that Death Rider is going after the person who kidnapped his sister,
who killed his sister, he thinks.
Except she's alive, and then he has.
Well, she is. I mean, she's dead. It's a vampire.
She's a vampire.
And let's talk about the fact that.
But is Death Rider a vampire? or not.
He,
And if
he-
his sister was a vampire and he's a vampire, like,
Who's
does it
the chick
matter?
he's riding in with, and why does he ride with her?
I
And then
it
after?
why
seems
does he take another one when he goes? It's not like
it's the
his
same
snack.
one.
He's like, I
What's
need
the
road
point?
snacks.
It's the
Yeah.
same one. She's the same one.
Yeah,
And
like
and what's weird about it is then then as she's riding, so it seems like she must actually be like his friend, right? Like he used her to get in, but then again, like, would you make your friend ride topless through the desert? It doesn't seem right,
Like
right? She
twice.
seems like twice.
Depends.
And okay, and then when they're riding away, they're on one horse, and she's holding on to
Yeah.
him from behind, and then she smiles, and the camera's like zooming in, like, oh, she's a vampire, and you're like, well, no shit. He gave her, that was how he got into sanctuaries. He bought his way in by giving them what he claimed was a virgin woman, which became one of the brothel girls, which, yeah, I assume she's a vampire. Everyone is a vampire except for a handful of people that get eaten. Like, which, by the way, why the hell would you be there? I mean, because these vampires don't seem like, the only one that actually seems like a traditional vampire is Julian Sands' character of Count Holiday. He stays in the catacombs. He has the long dark hair that's sort of, the gift of the Anne Ricean vampire.
Which to me is a
Interestingly
waste.
enough, Julian Sands was actually Anne Rice's choice to play the vampire Lestat. And the studio said no, because they wanted somebody with more theater pull, so they took Tom Cruise. I'm not saying Tom Cruise did a terrible job, but Julian Sands would have eaten that role alive, and it would have gone from like a mainstream successful vampire movie to being probably a true classic with him at the helm. It would have been brilliant. But anyway, so Julian Sands gets to play his vampire here. He has lines that people don't respond to. Like he basically has a monologue, but the monologue is supposed to be talking to Death Rider, and it's just Death Rider doesn't say anything the whole time, so it's sort of wasted. It actually feels, and I don't know if he ad-libbed as well, it feels like the character is actually irritated and the cast is irritated that there's nothing to be said, like, to this, because he delivers this speech and sort of it's like no one knows what to do with it in the scene. But his voice is great, his presence is great, he looks great, as far as the Party City wigs that they have, but I mean, he looks good. It was nice to see him, but as you said, Tad, I was hoping for because he does have a few other projects in the can, I checked, that will come out after this, but I was hoping for the Ray Liotta role in Cocaine Bear, which we will talk about on this pod, which is a lot of fun. And instead we got a real wasted opportunity. He's such a good actor.
If you're gonna have Julian Sands in your movie, have him be, like he's supposed to be some sort of vampire lord. Have him stalking through, have him checking in, sneaking around, popping up where you don't expect him.
Right.
Delivering some interesting lines. Do something with him and you work with him. Maybe he had some ideas, and it doesn't seem like that happened.
It's and I mean the death, so the climactic battle is quite anticlimactic because there is no actual physical contact.
I literally thought I missed something. I looked away and I was like, wait, did I miss something? I had to go back. I'm like, nope, I didn't.
Like, oh fuck, I cast Torch. Torch wins.
Yeah, it was it was
critical hit.
Yeah. So the Lord Vampire who cannot be killed. So there's one great effect, which is when Julian Sands basically is like got Death Rider without his guns, and he's up close next to him. Death Rider pulls out one of the silver railroad spikes and jams it up through his throat, but it goes up and sticks out the side of his cheek. That was a cool effect because Julian Sands' character is still talking through it and irritated and making sound, and he pulls it out. And that was great. It's a simple effect, and they actually shot it and edited it really well because it wasn't inserted there, right? Like it's an effect, it's an applique, and you can pull it out. And they actually, whether it was Danzig or there was another director of photography, whichever one or both, and in the editing booth, they actually did that really well. I loved it. I loved that little moment where he's jabbed in the face with this thing and he pulls it out and he's still talking. Then Death Rider gets his guns back because vampires, except for the Count, are apparently like they're easier to catch and kill than mosquitoes. Like it's like they must be like gerbils, where if they get bopped on the nose a little, they actually die from some sort of like spastic response. That's how brittle these guys are. But Death Rider gets his guns and he shoots Count
It
Holiday.
makes it even more confusing about why Death Rider was there for a prolonged period of time before he started killing vampires.
I mean, right. He killed a whole bunch without any effort, really, and he could have done that right away. I guess he just wanted to have sex with some vampire women before he killed them. I don't know. It's very unclear.
It was a long ride. He needed to take a nap.
He needed a nap. He needed, So anyway, so Julian Sands' character gets shot with bullets, and the bullets, by the way, in this movie do not follow physics. They stick to the surface of people's heads with the shell. The shell actually fits, so like it's not the bullet. I mean, it looks fine from like an artsy standpoint, but when a bullet is shot, the shell is not fired, right? The shell is ejected, and the metal tip that is backed with gunpowder inside the shell is launched. But what happens with his guns is the bullet fires the whole thing and just embeds itself in the faces of the people who get shot in the face.
It's actually a slingshot.
It is like well, we're not giving enough credit. It's actually a railgun. Yeah, no, it is a weird choice. I don't think, and this is one of those moments where just because you're an effective prop maker or a special effects artist, you don't always know how things work. So things like that are very weird. Like, it's just like, oh, this is not a thing that would happen. Guns don't do that. And he's using like normal revolvers. Like, they're not like special looking weapons or anything. They're revolvers. So anyway, that's a fun thing. But anyway, so Julian Sands gets shot and he's slowed down, but he just seems irritated. And we're like, okay, we're getting to some big like moment of like some big death scene. And as you said, Tad, the death scene is he's like, I'm gonna kill you, you can't do anything else. And Death Rider is like, oh yeah, I'm gonna blah blah blah. And he grabs a torch from off the wall and just brushes it, just swings it and brushes it across Julian Sands' chest. At which point Count Holiday just burns down. And I'm just like, that kills you? Why don't you have electricity in here? Like, the rest of the place or something. Have a lantern. Don't have an open flame. Like, if it's on the level of, it's more ridiculous than M. Night Shyamalan Signs, right? Where why would these aliens invade a planet that is mostly water and where water falls?
Why would you invade a planet that is humid?
It's like if we invaded Mercury. I mean, Venus, and we're like, oh no, I can't breathe.
Oh, my skin's burning.
Yeah, like it doesn't make sense. But hey, what are you gonna do? I like M. Night Shyamalan. I'm sure we'll talk about his movies more in the future. But anyway, okay. That didn't make any sense. It was not satisfying. And then the thing that makes me wonder, and I'm not trying to down Danzig. I don't think he's a stupid man. That is not what I ever want anybody to take for this. But I'm saying I don't. With Verotica, it was really, and frankly, with the Verotica comics, it's not clear that he understands story or knows how to write, and he's not an expert at dialogue. I mean, the best line out of Verotica being "ass fucking is my speciality." That's indicative of where we're heading normally. So the fact that there actually are some good moments in this, like when most of the vampires are killed in the saloon by Death Rider, and then once he leaves to go hunt the Count, the matron of the prostitutes tells them, like, well, go on, get their money, like take their guns. Like, she's ushering them out so they can take all the dead vampires who were just pile of ashes, all their money and guns, which is a great moment. And then when Death Rider and his random topless lady from the beginning leave, she's counting money. And he takes her and she's like, hey, that's going to cost you extra. And like, it was a great line. Like, it was just it seemed like something extra that we certainly got nothing of in Verotica. Like, there was nothing like that. No touch, no cleverness. in it. In fact, I specifically ripped on the lack of cleverness and wit in Verotica. There were a couple of moments, mainly that one, but at least a couple of moments where I was surprised, mainly because I was so not expecting there to be any, or at least none that was successful. But I liked that. Here's the biggest problem with this movie is the pacing. It's a little under an hour and a half. It should have been 20 minutes. I'm not even joking, right? There's
I
just
agree. Yeah,
there's just
that's
Plain old
fair.
time.
so much dead air. And it's worse than any of the films we've reviewed up to this point. It really is, because
Oh,
there are
yeah.
scenes that could have been cut. This by far, every single scene has like just it's the equivalent of dead air. Things are on the screen, people are staring at the screen, but there's nothing. Like there's just the plot doesn't move. We're just waiting for the next line. It's insane. The next thing that is a problem for me is that you have a vampire Western, which, by the way, there's I was confused when this movie was in production because, as I said, Bisley did the cover. Simon Bisley, very famous heavy metal artist. He's done other things. Very close friends with Kevin Eastman, co-creator of the Ninja Turtles. Kevin Eastman and Simon Bisley did a 64-page graphic novel called Fistful of Blood, which mixes like naughty comic sex, vampires, and hyperviolence into one story. And I mean, it features a gunslinger who is a topless woman who saves a town being both physically and literally ravaged by this Western gang of vampires, like these Nosferatu outlaws. And it's a great concept. And so there's no way in hell that Danzig had not seen that and was not aware of that. So I was actually, before we watched, I was like, I really need to see, because I have a hard time imagining that it's not a direct reimagining or translation of that story, because Bisley did the cover for this movie, he did the poster for this movie, he did the thing. It's so close in content or in concept, and it is not that story, but it is a far inferior version of that story, which, while very entertaining, I would probably classify as a C+ story anyway. So, and I'm a huge Eastman and Bisley fan. I mean, there's no question about that for me. But I was confused. So, as Tad said, it's a similar, you mix sort of the Western vibe with vampires with the much more successful and better Tarantino Rodriguez film From Dusk Till Dawn, and then you have this comic source, which we know Danzig is involved with, comics, right? With the poster done by the artist of that comic that is incredibly similar in concept. So it's really weird that this was done, and that it was nothing new was brought to the table, sort of as Tad kind of mentioned. That was really confusing. And the biggest sin, next to the fact that the movie is just, it is mostly dead, the equivalent of dead air, is that the actual vampire part of the story is completely pointless. As Tad said, there's nothing vampiric about this. Yes, they bite a couple of people, but the story is the fact that people are vampires means nothing. And the fact that every character is a vampire, pretty much, or seems to be, it makes it even less than nothing, because everyone's the same, then why are they vampires?
Because they
Nobody
needed to
had to
spend
be a
their budget
vampire.
on teeth.
I know,
Like,
and
right?
that, I will say, the
Also, like,
teeth were
you could
decent.
definitely make a drinking game out of taking a shot every time someone like licks their fangs, sort of like
Oh
tries
my
to like
god.
show off their teeth prosthetics that they're wearing for the movie. It's like
And
so ridiculous.
yeah, and I think so. I don't know, but I think somebody. I unfortunately don't know the name of the actor. I think it's Sean Walton. I believe he's a wrestler. Yes, I think it was Sean Walton. He was a WWF wrestler. He was
X-Pac?
X-Pac, yes. He was the guy who went up to the bar before the big bar gun brawl or gunfight scene, and he drank the free shots that Death Rider was handing out, and it was whiskey with powdered silver in it, so they started to explode. Except for him, all of the fangs were clearly fitted by they were nice pre-done fangs or they were fitted by a special effects artist because they could speak with them. Eli Roth especially, Eli had very long fangs and he could speak totally. There was no slurring or anything. The only person that I noticed the slurring was X-Pac. And so I assume he had some sort of Party City slip-ins. But again, he only has like 2 lines. He's like, oh, thanks for the drink. You're all right. And then he starts to scream and blows up. So yet another sort of cameo in this movie that's interesting.
That means
I
2 X-Pac cameos for each Danzig movie.
really,
He was in Verotica. I commented it on that
I
2
don't
years
remember.
ago.
I
I
there's so much.
I know,
Um,
in Verotica, I instantly recognized him. In this one, I was like, "Oh shit, that was him."
yeah, so it's and I mean, we've got a lot of other things that are kind of cool. Like Leaving is in this. He's the bartender at one time at one moment, and of course, he's the lead singer of Fear, the hardcore band out of LA, a very famous punk band. So there's, I mean, everyone just about like last time with Erotica, how everyone was somebody in sort of the adult film world for the most part. This one has everyone is pretty much somebody in either music or other films. So it's kind of neat to see all of these cameos. And of course, we didn't even mention the fact that Death Rider's sister, younger sister, who he thought was dead, which is why he's going to kill the Count because he killed his family, whatever we assume, uh, is actually keeping. Actually turned his sister into a vampire. We didn't even talk about the fact that she is played by Kansas Bowling, who was one of the sort of the surf women girls who were killed and drained of blood by Druhika in Verotica. So she returns here, and that's indicative of the fact that, I mean, Glenn Danzig is an icon for so many of us because of his co-founding of the Misfits and sort of ever presence in the world of punk to metal, right? So because of that, I guarantee yes, everyone was paid, but so many of these people, it's like there was a movie with Bob Dylan, everybody wanted to be in it even without getting paid because it was Bob Dylan. So like this is the case here. Like people return because you get to work with Glenn Danzig. um there's a lot of others as well that have returned as sort of side characters. Tasha Rain, adult actress, is, and other actress as well. She was in Good Boys and some other things, some other sort of low budget things as well, which we love. Was the topless, I don't know what you even call her, virginal woman. I don't really get the in the beginning. So when Death Rider shows up at the bar, I mean at the town, I forget what it's called, but for Sanctuary, he brings the payment, which is this woman, and they're like, "You're sure she's pure or clean or something like that?" Basically, we're to assume virginal. And he says like she's virgin as hell, or she's virgin as hell is, and I'm like, okay, well, I would assume hell is not virgin. So I'm very confused by this statement. Is it supposed to be that he's messing with them? Especially since this woman is not, she's not like a 14-year-old in the old West. You know what I mean? She clearly would have been married or a woman of the night, a painted dove, so to speak. She would have been somebody. So the fact that you would, it's just a weird, it's a weird thing. I'm like, it didn't have to be even, I don't know. It didn't have to be the fact that she's a virgin, especially since what the hell did that have to do with anything? We never understand why. They just wanted it. I don't know.
I mean, in certain, I guess in certain contexts, you could argue that to vampires, virginal would mean, is she still human? But
I
again, that's a
suppose.
theme that would need to be explored that didn't get explored, therefore also pointless. So
I
who
mean, I
cares?
guess maybe that would be then an excuse as to why her revealing her fangs at the end were uh like a reveal. I don't, it's really stretching. Again, we're given no understanding. Like the backstory for Death Rider is completely unclear, as we said, which really is kind of necessary to actually care about his drive, because we know at the end that the Count killed his sister or turned her into a vampire, and we assume, or sort of it's implied, the rest of his family. But then we also hear that he came across Bad Bathory, Danzig's character, when Danzig was killing a bunch of deputies. So you're like, was Death Rider a deputy? Like, what the hell is happening here? Were the deputies vampires? Were they people? Who is there? Are there people? What is this? This world does no building. So it's very, very unclear.
What is Sanctuary?
What is Sanctuary? I mean, why do the yeah, it's that was the big question. So anyway, I think we can move on to recommendations or not. I'll go first, as is tradition at this point. If you're a huge Danzig fan and you watch Verotica and you want to see his progression, sure. When you get a chance, watch Death Rider and the House of Vampires. I'll tell you this though, it's not one you're going to rewatch a lot because it is slow as molasses. It's kind of sometimes it's so slow that it actually starts moving backwards. Like you're like, did I watch this scene again? And who knows, maybe you did. Maybe the streaming is buffering, maybe the Blu-ray got hit and it skipped back. It's really unclear. I don't know. I'm going to say this too. I like Devon Sawa. He's a great actor. I would not have cast him personally in this role. The reason being is that he's a very handsome man, and not that your lead in a Western shouldn't be handsome, but I want them to be rough. Like I want them to have some sort of, if he's got this sort of mysterious, yeah, he needs to reflect the scarring that has happened, that has caused him to be, to be this character. Like in Django, our lead is got the most beautiful piercing blue eyes, but he's rough. He's sweaty all the time. He's got stubble like me. He's got a rough go of it, right? He seems like he's intent on something beyond what is actually in the room around him. And that's true. We don't get that with Devon Sawa's character, and I don't know that it plays. Like he would be a fantastic, and not to pigeonhole him as a comedian, he's done serious roles as well, but he would have been a fantastic bartender in this movie because he could have brought so much more character to it. Whereas you have to do a lot without talking, without a huge amount of expression when you're this kind of Clint Eastwood, Sergio Leone Western kind of character. You need to be able to carry that. You need to be able to be, the original Django vibe. And it's just not my cast for this. He does the job fine, but I would have given him a different role. And I think that might have been, frankly, you know what? I actually probably would have cast Danzig in that role. He doesn't have to be young. He could have played that real rough, grizzled guy pretty well. Anyway, so do I recommend this? I only recommend this to people who have experience with Verotica and are interested to see Danzig's progression to his next movie. I do think that this is a progression in understanding of storytelling. It's not a huge leap. Verotica is, on second watch, pretty much unwatchable. Death Rider, I don't want to watch it again because it's so slow, but if it had been paced better with more actual happening in the movie, sure, I'd watch it again. So it's interesting to see his progression. I'm curious to see what his next movie is. How about that? All right, Mandy, would you recommend 2021's Death Rider and the House of Vampires? And if so, why and to who?
No, it's a whole lot of boob abuse. On horseback. No, I just wouldn't, for all the reasons that you mentioned. I think in the past, on other films, that we've kind of struggled to give a full recommendation for a sit down movie watching, is throw it on in the background at a themed party or something,
Sure.
But this one, maybe if you also had music on and it is literally just a visual, literally just a visual, but you can't even really tell that these people are vampires most of the time. So
the gall of
no.
Danzig to say he scored this movie when he wrote one song and used just one riff from it, a handful of times throughout the movie that's otherwise silent. In that case, I scored 90% of that movie. That silence was mine. I made that. Yeah. So anyway,
so this is just a no kind of all around for me. it just can't even say like unless you like really being confused or like filling in all your own plot holes, like maybe like, but it's just it can't even use it as like very much of an example of like what's good and bad. Like I mean, Tad just did outline that a bit for us.
Yeah.
I think he hit most of it, but like, is there not even like a ton to learn from this other than
Because
like
there's not a
this
lot
is
of
not a
content.
movie. It is
It's
not a
yeah,
movie.
there's not a content. Like it's just it's a
Guess if
short
you
film.
had an assignment for film school and you need to cut down, like you need to do a
Right.
re-edit of something, like do an absolute like massive edit on something, this would be a good one.
I agree with that. I'll also say this. We brought up Tad brought this up. I actually don't. So I guess this movie may be sexier in the way that there's less direct or less like obvious and focused on misogyny, mistreatment of women. Like the women, like yes, women are eaten in this movie, but
I was
a
like,
lot
well,
of the
they're
people
being mistreated, they're being literally eaten in this, you
yeah,
know.
but I mean, I feel like Verotica was much harsher. There was lots more rape and neck breaking, and
This is
Yeah.
more the women in this were at least some of the time running the show.
yeah, there were a couple, and
There was kind of a
I'll give
dom thing going on.
yeah,
I do
I'll
feel
give it.
like a lot of like the direction of you're like, who directed this? What direction was given to these people that make like no noise when they die? Because you thought it was mostly the men, right? Like
Yeah,
for making no noise when they
right,
die.
which is
And
unsettling,
like the
right?
women are like moaning continuously through
Yeah,
being like
for like minutes
eaten,
on
and I'm
end.
like,
Yeah,
yeah, I was like, it's just a porn
it becomes an
director.
upsetting
It's
fetish
like,
video at
dudes
times.
don't make noise. Women noise all the time. Like
Right.
just
Which you
keep
know, I mean
going, right?
that is kind of you know the male point of view porn rule, right? I mean, I guess like they don't you don't usually hear the man making a whole lot of noise. And they probably I'm sure they've you know done polling and found that was polling. I'm using air quotes for that to find out. Yeah, so that's but because of that, I think that may be the only reason why sometimes Death Rider might actually feel a little sexy because I think if you were to take it piecemeal, I think Verotica has sexier moments because it has the whole strip club scene in the middle, even though it's not really
It's
titillation.
the unsexiest strip
Yes,
club
I know.
ever.
Saddest strip club ever.
It is. Well, I'm sure there's some pretty sad ones, unfortunately. But I
Um,
mean, I think that it at least there is actually a show of skin because Death Rider has a weird thing, which is Veronica had too. It's like it tries to be extra sexual or sexy, but we get one, I guess you'll call it a sex scene between Devon Sawa and Kim Director. And she's topless and there's blood everywhere, and she does a great show of rubbing her chest, you know, kudos, good, that's great, whatever. You know, that's lots of people's thing, great. But it doesn't really feel like a sex scene because it's sort of a I don't I don't know.
Because
It's
it's
got like
directed
a
by Glenn Danzig instead of a porn director.
I
Is that what you're trying to say?
no, I think
like
I
they have
don't.
the
It's
not porn direct. They just have the porn director doing all the death scenes, but
yeah,
like
it's
the
more like an
actual sex
AI,
scenes is
right?
like
It's more like AI said it, and like you know, like rubbed boobs covered in blood, um, and then we have another sex scene in theory, between him and Ashley Wisdom right after. There's no breakup or pacing there, I don't think. But in that one, we get full cut to black, like very Hallmark Channel, right? And
Mhm.
then comes to them in bed, him pulling up his pants. She is still fully clothed, not only fully clothed, she is still wearing that like 16-inch cinched corset. Which you can't, I mean, I look, I'm not speaking from experience, but it's got to be super uncomfortable to even lay down in a bed in one of those. And to
Oh
try and
no, it
get up,
is.
you're gonna need a hand. So
Yeah,
Ted, oh, it is. Yeah,
I
particularly
so
know
bendy.
because I've
Yeah.
had girlfriends who have worn those things, and
so
yes, they can't
right.
move
So,
very
you know,
well.
and I mean, hey, I don't like I understand the desire, like, well, you know, my girlfriend doesn't have to be nude in this movie, you know, like she had eyeball boobs in the last one, so it's fine. I get that. That's totally fine. Like, I don't have a problem with that, but it was very odd. Like, at least have like she can be fully clothed, but have the blanket pulled up. Like the being in the full like get up still is just like it reminds me of the Mystery Science Theater. Like you can do that through pants. Like, you know what I mean? It's just a funny thing. And then the scene right after that is when they take her to be hung outside and killed, and she's in a different outfit, which is crazy because it means they made her change to like a full flowing like nightgown, like a Victorian era nightgown. That was a weird moment. And then and I also, before we move on to Tad's recommendation or not, I said I would talk about this.
It's like you just keep sucking us back in.
I know I can't, there's so much to talk about. And my notes are just like thing after thing. It's the So in Verotica, there's one moment in particular where logic is already not working in that movie, but there's one thing that just completely causes, like, if an android watched it, or a cyborg even, their brain would just short circuit and their face would explode off, is when at the end of the first section, Dejette and the albino spider, when the albino spider creature's been killing women by breaking their necks, and the police burst in, Dejette's already dead on the floor, and the Spider-Man character, man spider, whatever you want to call him, is in front of the police, standing completely away from Dejette. And because it's in the script, one of the policemen shouts, "Get your hands off her neck." Well, I wanted, at that point, I wanted the spider guy to just like hold up all 6 of his hands, like, here I am, you know, like, and then we could have made it like anyway. So there's one moment or one section of things in this movie that becomes that absurd, which is the fact that it is full on 4 o'clock broad daylight, and they're like, "The sun's coming up, Holmes." Like, it's not even,
so
it's not
so
even blue
confusing.
for night, like day for night blue screen.
Yeah.
It's just straight up like, dude, you will get a sunburn in the middle of the night here. Like, that is just it is wild. And later, like, the dawning of the sun, at least when Ashley Wisdom's character is killed, at least it's like the sunrise, even though it's pretty darn bright out to begin with. But like when Death Rider arrives after having tied Danny Trejo up in the desert, when he arrives to this place to seek sanctuary, is like, "It's getting pretty bright out here." I'm like, "No, it's getting dark. It is the middle of the afternoon. You won't get any brighter." Like, this is the brightest part of the day. And so I was very confused why that was not even an effort was made to change that. Really weird.
I feel like we had a conversation similar to this years ago with one of those movies. It's a vampire movie, or was it? I don't remember, but it involved really bad day to night transitions and a black guy. You remember that movie?
What was it? Well, listeners, we've talked about over 200 movies like on this podcast.
It was really good. I enjoyed that movie, but it had the same problem where they went, "Oh, we can't film at night," as it turns out, because we don't have the equipment to do so.
Yes, I do remember something of that. Listeners, if you know what that is, if you remember, or if you want to do the effort and go through the archives, shoot us a message either on Instagram at Cult and Classic Films, our Facebook.com/Cult and Classic Films, or email info@cultandclassicfilms.com. I also want to remind you that every month you can get a brand new exclusive cult movie. These are like ultra low budget, pretty much impossible to find, out of print, never released cult films. I mean, these are real obscure guys for the most part, and gals, and non-binary folks, and anyone in between or beyond. These are hard to find. Go to our Patreon and sign up, and you'll get them every month for cheap. We're talking like $20 shipped, no shipping extra in the United States, or $25 for really cool special editions every single month that have like signed posters, retro milk caps. I can't call them pogs because that's trademarked. Slip covers, collectible slip covers. This month, if you're listening in October of 2023, we've released another double feature of movies: Half-Life Horror from Hell, also known as Irradiated Satan Rocks the World, paired with Evil Brew, both from Mark Mackner of Daisy Durkin's fame. It's got professional wrestlers. Superfly Snuka is in it. It's got lots of great cast members who've moved on to larger television and film projects. Really cool. And also, if you get the special edition, it has a naughty slipcover reveal, like an old 50s pen, where you takes the bathing suit off when you click it. It's fun. It's got a little topless reveal. So anyway, go to patreon.com/Cult and Classic Films to sign up, or you can buy the films a la carte for a little bit more at cultandclassicfilms.com. Go to the shop. thank you so much. I really appreciate this. Glenn Danzig, make another movie. We'll talk about it. Thank you so much. And I don't know what Tad's holding his hands out for. If you can see, it's like he's
You're
Danziging at me.
skipping me, you asshole.
Ah, damn it. I was hoping we did that.
Wow. Again.
I move. You know what? My brain is so fast. I just wanted to pitch that in before the end of the podcast. That way nobody can turn it off because they know the credits are coming. Tad, would you recommend Death Rider and the House of the Vampire from 2021 by Glenn Danzig? If so, why and to who? I'm speaking at the speed that the characters talk in Death Rider, by the way.
So
Much faster.
no.
Much faster.
You can just watch From Dusk Till Dawn, and it's a
Yeah.
great movie. It's like this movie, but better. As a matter of fact, it's a sexier movie too, because despite the fact that Glenn Danzig likes to hire porn stars to be in his movies, they don't act like porn stars. So if you're gonna, you keep complaining, this movie could have been 20 minutes, and that's something that I normally say, because yes, I could go chop, chop, chop. Most of this doesn't need to exist. Fill that time with music videos and boobs and turn it into a Beavis and Butthead episode, and this movie would have been a fucking cult classic.
So
that's my recommendation.
I think you should literally then remove the entire movie and just watch some Beavis and Butthead episodes. I think you're doing the Jeff thing.
Brilliant.
You're doing the Jeff thing of, so the problem with this movie is the plot and the characters. And if you took them out and replaced it with this plot and these different characters, it'd be brilliant.
So what you're saying is if I watched something else, it would have solved the whole problem.
This movie is excellent if you put it on in another room and watch this movie on the TV in front of you. So yes, no, I totally get that. And yes, of course, we have the like stunning, famous striptease dance scenes from Selma Hayek, who still somehow at what 50 looks like unbelievable, supposedly with no fillers.
They're always lying, Nate. You know
I'm
that.
closing my
Every
eyes
single
at
one
you.
of them lies.
Of course, when they say that though, it's always someone who is always stunningly beautiful. Like, you know, like, oh, J-Lo looking amazing at 50 something. I'm like, yeah, she looked amazing at 22, like more than other people in the world. So what, like, tell me that Roseanne Barr looks amazing at 60 something. Like, tell me that, I'll be impressed. Like, no offense to Roseanne. I mean, she does plenty of offending herself. But
Nate, it's like people who are like, my breasts look amazing for me not having breast implants, and it's like, okay, so what you're saying is you do have that. Gotcha.
And you know, and you know, ladies, there's lots of, apparently I just learned there's lots of advancements in breast implants. You can often still breastfeed and do all these things because of the different placements, but we're finding that a lot of them can cause problems like autoimmune deficiencies and things like that. So really be careful. Don't mess with your health.
There are absolutely problems, and we're not condoning nor condemning breast implants. We're just saying,
or pornography.
Be careful.
All for the star. I'm glad these adult stars. I'm actually really happy to see like adult stars being cast heavily in non, you know, pornographic films whenever they want. Like, that's great. If that's what you want to do, cool.
It's just that
if we had something else, you know,
we had an entirely different crop back in the 70s and 80s. We had like Nina Hartley, who has been cast in real roles because she was actually good at acting. We don't have, it's harder to bridge that gap now because everyone has become very specialized. Like, wasn't the porn industry like something you fell into when you just couldn't, when either you couldn't get a role or you just couldn't hack it, and nowadays it's just, that's what I do now.
I don't know. I mean, you could look at many people in this movie. I mean, Tasha Rain, who plays the topless sort of victim slash willing tradee to get in. I mean, she's done several, you know, non-adult features like Attack of the Unknown from I think 2021 or 2020, and then she did a short, and then she did this movie, and then she did Cum Shot Eruptions Volume 3. So like I think it might actually be getting to the point where you can go back and forth if you really want to, and I hope that's the case.
It's too bad that Danzig didn't give her more opportunity in this film, aside from bouncing around on a horse and then going to nothing for 45 minutes plus.
Are you kidding? She probably cracked a rib. That was just a terrible experience, I'm sure.
Also the
Anywho's it's
She'll be
underwear.
going back to have some more work done, probably to reset them.
to fix what she accidentally she got
That's true.
damaged
There
by
might
that
be some
scene.
drift.
Brutal.
Yeah, and I guess I think I didn't check the credits for a costumer. I'm sure there are costumer credits, but whoever was responsible for not getting her something else, Tasha Rain, to wear than those super like disco shorts, it was so weirdly out of sync with the rest of the movie. Like clearly it was from another gig or what she wore to set, and they just like let her do that, and you're just like, or just made her do that, not let her, just made her do that, and you're like, that is not like. That is
No,
not
no. Yeah.
Anyway.
No.
Anyway. Okay. Thank you all so much for joining us for this episode of Cult and Classic Films. We'll be back next week with another double shot of films, one mainstream, one cult, that are thematically linked. I'm excited to tell you about them, but I'm going to wait till next week because you never know what's going to happen in the meantime. Something else could pop up that's just too important, and we have to talk to you about it then. Thank you so much again. Join the Patreon, get great movies from cult people. And by the way, all of our movie sales, money goes directly to the filmmakers. We do not cut our filmmakers out of their earnings. They get money from us, okay, when the movies sell. So buy those movies, get money to the filmmakers so they can make more films and we can talk about them. Have a great one. Enjoy, stay safe, stay weird. And to play us out as always is the Chud with All About Evil. Hey everyone, thanks for listening to Cult and Classic Podcast. This podcast is important to me, but what's more important are the rights, privileges, and freedom from violence of everyone in this country and in this world. And that means supporting Black Lives Matter. If you'd like to make a donation, please go ahead and visit cultandclassicpodcast.com, where we have a list of places you can donate and help out. And please stay safe.